Hi, everyone. This is Kirsten, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Relocate Podcast. Before we begin, I want to take some time and thank every single person who has ever taken a moment to listen to this podcast. Even though it's called the Relocate Podcast, in essence, it's about moving to different places and starting over. I love to touch on the mental health aspect of it and how that intersects with relocating. So, if you're a new listener, I definitely want you to keep that in mind as you navigate this space. And give me a follow. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. All right. So today I am so excited to introduce you all to Heidy De La Cruz. Did I pronounce that last name
You did.
correctly?
Yep.
Okay.
You sure
Yay.
did.
I just want to make sure. I love your name, by the way. It's just
Thank you.
it's fly. Yeah. So Heidi was born in New York City, raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She currently lives in Florida, where she's been there for the last 12 years. A little more about Heidi because she is doing amazing things as far as being a podcaster. She's a podcast producer. She hosts a weekly personal development newsletter called Into My Thoughts on Substack, where she shares her experiences with life's lessons, book reviews, and opinion pieces. And more about her podcast, which is an award winning podcast, by the way. It's called The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants, where immigrants share the journey of coming to the United States. Maybe we should expand that because I saw you did an episode with a lady who immigrated to the
Yeah.
UK.
Yes.
Yeah. So she also helps women entrepreneurs from a consultant standpoint, people who want to branch into the field of podcasting, busy moms, women entrepreneurs, people of that nature. So people who want to start their podcast, share digital products, things of that nature. She has a 6 weeks course. Get into it. She's been doing this for years now, and she's pretty darn good at it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and in her free time, she enjoys reading, listening to podcasts, and making memories with her family. So I will definitely drop her information in the description of this podcast so you can connect with Heidi offline. So, all right. Heidi, how you doing, girl?
That's a heavy question right now. But overall I'm good. I'm big on my faith. And so even though there's a lot of things going on, it does impact me like emotionally. Like I really do feel it. I get heartbroken and just sad. So I tend to take breaks from social media and what's going on. And then I, go back and just read the Bible and be rooted in God's word. And if anyone's, out there is a believer and they've read the book of Revelations, we know that unfortunately things are going to get worse before they get better. But yeah, so I'm good overall. I'm good overall.
I resonate with that 1000%. I mean, I tell you, I barely touch my personal Instagram now because
Mm,
I was so surprised by the amount of people I knew who wanted to support hate just
mm,
to coat their pockets. It
yeah.
was it was very just disheartening, and
Hmm.
I had to take a step back and just try not to feed into everything as far as the hate and
Yeah.
people trying to steer away from Christianity, not realizing that, the religion's not the problem, it's the people who are weaponizing it. That's the problem.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Yes.
So yeah, it's
Man.
really hard. It's been affecting my mental health seeing
Hmm.
people getting torn from their families and
Yeah.
people who are just simply out here trying to have a better life. And I mean, we're all here trying to do the same thing just in different
Yes.
ways, and
Yep.
right now we're all being under attack
Legit.
unless
Yeah.
you're a rich straight white man, which yeah, it's the truth. If y'all been following me, I'm a little blunt. Like I don't care because it's the truth. So, with straight white man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we gonna get into it because it's the Heidi show, and we want to understand your background and
Yeah.
what led you to Florida and what
Man.
even inspired you to take a stand with your podcast and your
Yeah.
newsletter. So yeah, let's get into it. Born in New York and raised in
Yeah.
Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah, so my parents are both Dominican. My mom did pass away in 2016, but both Dominican, both immigrated from the Dominican Republic. And I was born. So it seems like the Dominicans just like go straight to New York and then they'll like branch out everywhere else. So they immigrated to New York first, and then I was born there. And then my dad explained to me that I think when I was about 3 months old, he got caught in a bodega that was being robbed, and so he was put in a freezer with a gun, to his head. So that traumatic experience was like, okay, we need to get out of here. And so at the time, he had a friend, a Dominican friend, who was out in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This was, early 90s. And the friend told him, like, hey, there are good jobs out here in Grand Rapids. Come, move over here. And so they decided to go move to Grand Rapids, Michigan, my father, my mom, and I. And so I just grew up there. After my parents got divorced, my mom did not like Grand Rapids, Michigan. She could not, take the cold. So she decided to move to Miami, Florida, Hialeah specifically. It's majority Cubans, Hispanic population. So she decided to move there. And so after the divorce, I stayed with my dad. And so I grew up with my dad, my grandma, my aunt, and uncle, because they eventually also immigrated from the Dominican Republic. But my grandma's stubborn because she was like, everybody goes to New York. I don't like New York. I'm not going to New York. So my dad was already in Grand Rapids. So then my grandma just, ended up being in Grand Rapids. And then once my dad remarried with my stepmom, also a Dominican immigrant, then we all moved together. So then my siblings were born. I have a younger sister who is 12 years younger than me. And then I have a little brother who's 18 years younger than me. And so yeah, we grew up there, Grand Rapids. My dad ended up hurting his back at his factory job. He was my dad, from my memory when I was younger, my dad was always working. Two jobs, like always. So he was always a really hard worker, different factory jobs. He was also a mechanic, or he also is a mechanic. He knows a lot about cars, so he would like fix people's cars, their brakes, things like that, change the oils and things like that. So he was just always working. And so he injured his back in the factory, and it was a whole thing. Yeah, it was a whole thing. He ended up having to have surgery and then go back to physical therapy and all of that. But eventually it got to the point where once the winters came, the cold was just really harsh on the back pain. And so he was like, we need to move somewhere warmer. And so I remember my parents trying to move my senior year of high school. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, no, you guys can wait another year. I'm literally about to graduate. I literally grew up with these people that I'm graduating with. So I was like, y'all can hold off one more year and then y'all can move. They ended up moving 2011 down to Florida, and I stayed back for to go to college in Michigan. However, I was also at the time with my daughter's dad, so that was another reason why I wanted to stay in Michigan, because we were in a relationship. So I stayed back for another year. And then it was summer of 2012. I was like, I'm really missing my family. Like, so, like, even that was hard. Like, when they left to Florida and I stayed back, like, yeah, that was hard. I remember calling my stepmom so many times, like, crying on the phone, like, I miss you guys. Why did you guys leave me? And things like that. But I made it through that year. I decided to move down to Florida, to where they were at the time. I believe, oh, they were in West Palm Beach. So that's where they moved. And then when I moved down, like, I hated it. I did not like West Palm Beach. I did not like Florida at all. I felt like the weather was too hot. I didn't really hang out with anybody. So, like, I didn't really make friends, because when I moved, like, I wanted to continue my education. So I started college and then I was working, but I was like working second shift. So it was just like school, work, and homework, school, work, and homework. Like, that was my life. And I was like, I hate this. I'm miserable. So I actually ended up moving back to Grand Rapids. Like I only lasted 6 months and I ended up moving back to Grand Rapids. Um, my father's daughter was still in Michigan, and so then when I ended up going back, I ended up getting pregnant. And then the thing was that he was an international student from the Dominican Republic as well. And so when you have a visa as an international student, there's a clause in there where you have to go back to your country after you graduate, unless you get a job within the field that you're studying, and then there's more paperwork that needs to be filed. And so it was actually towards the end of when he was graduating that I ended up getting pregnant. And so he was like, like, I got to go back. Like, it's part of my contract and everything. So, long story short, he ended up going back to the Dominican Republic and we ended up still being together. So we ended up getting married and everything. And so we ended up being together for like 6 years. So, but because he had to go back to the Dominican Republic, I was literally by myself in Michigan with my daughter. And so that's why then I decided to move back to Florida, because I was like, I don't need to be raising my daughter by myself. My family is there. So I ended up moving back to Florida and then I just stayed. So after moving the whole back and forth thing, like I ended up staying here in Florida, and I lived in Miami for a little bit, and then I was like, I can't do Miami, and so then I moved. I think I was there for like 3 months, and then I moved to Orlando, to where like my actual parents were. So I actually ended up moving with my mom for a little bit in Miami. This was 2014, yeah, because she passed in 2016. So I lived with her for like 3 months, and then I moved to Orlando. So there was just a lot of jumping back and forth between the moves, and then so settled here in Central Florida. Yeah, just I went through a lot with my daughter's dad. So, like I said, we got married. So I did go through the whole immigration process to get him here to the United States. So I think I don't remember if we went through the no, we didn't go through the visa to the financial. My gosh, we didn't go through the finance visa, fiance visa, because we were already married. So he came, and I think we did an adjustment of status because I'm a citizen, right? And so we were, by that time that he did his 2 years in Dominican Republic, which was what the contract said, we were able to do an adjustment of status for him. And so we did the whole immigration process for him. And then but like, lo and behold, when he came to the Dominican, or to the United States, like I found out that the whole time, pretty much the whole time that we were together, he was cheating on me. And so once I found that out, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this to my daughter. And so we ended up divorcing. So that was a fun experience all in itself. And then yeah, after that, I continued to go to school. I was working in the medical field. And then shortly after that, actually, I met my now husband, which is funny because before we started recording, I had mentioned to you that he immigrated from the Dominican Republic to New York. They lived there for about 10 years. And then he actually lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, too. So he lived in Grand Rapids for like 15 years, but him and I never really crossed paths in Grand Rapids. So him and I met here in Central Florida, and yeah, so we got together, and he has just been, it's such an amazing partner, really helping me with my healing journey, because I know you mentioned how like moving really affects like your mental health. And I think that's why I ended up moving back to Grand Rapids at first, because I was like, I feel so depressed, like I don't have like really an outlet or anything like that. So it was like a really hard transition. But then I realized, like, when you move, you kind of need to give it a year to like really be able to like settle in. So I only gave it 6 months. So that was probably, but I was also young, didn't know what I was doing. And yeah, so now I've been with my now husband for 8 years, almost 8 years, married for 5. And
Wow.
yeah, his story and my parents' story is also like the inspiration of why I started the podcast. So I said a lot. Let me know if there's anything you want me to like go deeper in. But yeah, that was my back and forth with the moves.
This is good. This is good. I do have a few questions.
Yeah.
And I want to start with Michigan, like when
Mhm.
you were younger
Yeah.
and your parents were there with you. Um, and you mentioned that a family friend encouraged your father to relocate from New York City to Michigan. I don't know much about Michigan or what the cultural makeup looks like there,
Yeah.
but how was the community that you grew up in? Was it supportive of your cultural background? Like, were there people around other than
Yeah.
your family friend? How did that work?
Yeah, so from what I've heard back then in the 90s, there wasn't a big Dominican community, but as years went on, it's like, one person moves and then they know someone else, and then so it's like they like suggest like, "Hey, come, to Grand Rapids." So back in the 90s, apparently there wasn't that many Dominicans, but as the years went on, the community has grown. So let's say like I want to say like around when I got to like high school, like I knew more Dominican people. And so yeah, very supportive. I grew up, I went to Godwin Heights, and it was very diverse. So like I had black friends, I had Mexican friends, I had yeah, we were when I think about growing up, like I was like, I had a very big mix of friends and I absolutely loved it. And so, as being the only Dominican in the group, like I would, try to like say, like educate and stuff like that. And my best friend, still to this day, she is mixed. She is, her mom is white, her dad is black. And I remember just like growing up, like there was just certain things that I wasn't allowed to do. Like, for example, spend the night. Like, I could not spend the night anywhere. And that used to get her so upset. It's like, why doesn't your dad trust me? And I was like, it's not that he doesn't trust you. It's just like that is not a cultural norm for us. Like in the Dominican Republic, you don't do that. And so unless it's like a family emergency or anything like that. So that was like one of the biggest things. And then I remember again, I mentioned how my dad was like a mechanic. So like we always had like a bunch of cars in our house. And every single time I would get dropped off from like anyone, any of my family friend or parents or anything, it never failed. They always ask us like, do you guys own a dealership? Because there was literally like always cars in our front yard. I'm like, no, my dad is just a mechanic and he just likes working on cars and stuff. So, but yeah, no, it was very supportive community. I remember the Dominican Independence Day is in February, and there, in February in up north is like the middle of winter. And so I remember
Oof.
they will still do a parade for Dominican Independence Day. So it will be like, a big line of cars going through the city with the flags and everything. And then they would go to they would stop at a school, and then they would have like performances of food and things like that to celebrate the culture. So yeah, so growing up it was really cool. Like there was more Dominicans there embracing the cultures. But Rapids also has a big Mexican community. So like
Mm.
whenever we go back to visit, like I always have to eat tacos because I cannot find tacos in Central Florida as good as they are in Grand Rapids. So I was telling my
Wow.
husband, I was like, we gotta go hit the Mexican spots because they're just so good. So yeah, so there is a big Mexican community up there, a lot of Puerto Ricans as well. So, but the majority of like Grand Rapids as a whole, the majority are white. So I will say that. And it's yeah, with the whole election thing, it was, I believe Grand Rapids was wet red this time around. So like there is, you experience the racism and stuff like that. Like my dad always wanted me to go with him to like the junkyards for the cars or like AutoZone and stuff like that because he wanted me to translate for him and like help him. And I remember one day I was like, Dad, I was like, well, I said, Puppy. I was like, Puppy, like, you know English. Why do you need me to go? And then he explained to me that it was like, it's not that he doesn't understand them, but he is like, but when I talk, they don't take the time to listen and like try to understand because of his accent. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm
Oh,
so sorry. Yeah, I felt so because like I'm a girl, like I don't want to go to the junkyard. I don't want to go to AutoZone, It's all full of men. But when he explained that to me, I was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. Like in my mind, that didn't click. So I went with him to translate. I would go with him to like the doctor's offices and stuff like that to help translate. And then My stepmom also had told me about this one time where she was, I think she like had picked up the phone in a because she worked at the hospital, and so a patient told her like, I want to talk to someone who speaks English. And she was like, but what do you mean I'm speaking English? Right? She's like, no, I want someone who speaks American English. Like it just was bad. So things like that, they've had experience up there, and so it just, breaks my heart because it's just like they have an accent because they know two languages. Like they, so it's just like the ignorance of people, it just, yeah, really gets to me. So that's how it was a little bit growing up in Grand Rapids.
People, some people who speak like that and can only speak one language, I don't think they realize the muscle that you have to like, the muscles that are working in your brain to
Like, yeah.
navigate between one language and translating into another language.
Mm-hmm.
That that takes a lot of muscle memory. And some people are able to do that with three languages and four and
Yeah,
beyond.
I've had
I don't
interviewed
know how they do it,
guests.
but salute.
Yeah, I've interviewed guests that had like 3, 5 languages, and I'm just like, that's amazing. Like, I absolutely love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder how because it seems like your folks moved to Florida, they never really left, right? Until
No,
no.
they love to hear. But honestly, my dad did make a comment like a few years ago saying like if it wasn't for his back being hurt, he probably would still be living in Grand Rapids because he didn't mind the 4 seasons. He didn't mind the snow. He actually liked it. And like Grand Rapids is the second biggest city in the state. Like Detroit is the first, but it
Mm,
still has like that small town feel. So like literally everything is like 15 minutes or less. So like if you're going somewhere that's more than 15 minutes, like you're pretty much out of Grand Rapids. And so he loved that. He loved that small town feel. He didn't mind
yeah.
he loved the 4 seasons. So he told me, he was like, if my back, if he could still work, because now he's on disability. So he was like, if I could still work and I had not had that injury, like he was like, I would probably still be living in Grand Rapids. Now, will I still be living in Rapids? I honestly don't know because like now that I'm stable here in Central Florida, I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's just so much more out there than Grand Rapids. Like, I don't know. I just, yeah, I feel like everybody knows everybody in Grand Rapids.
It's kind of cool in a sense. Speaks to the communal values that are there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Grand Rapids. I'm gonna have to put that on my list of places to visit.
Yeah, let me know and I will give you, suggestions of things to try out, check out, restaurants to try out. Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you. Okay. You also mentioned you were in southern Florida for a bit, but you ultimately settled on Central Florida.
Yes.
What was it about South Florida that may have challenged you, or what was it about that area that didn't feel like home to you at the time?
That is a really good question because since my mom had moved to Miami, Hialeah, like I would spend the summers with her down there. So it's not like it was like an unfamiliar territory. But I don't know. This is gonna sound so bad, but people don't know how to drive in South Florida at all. And so I would get really bad road rage. And I was like, come on, guys, like it's not that hard. Um I don't know. I also, it was also because of the circumstance that I moved down there. My mom was dealing with mental health issues. And come to find out, she got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which we didn't know she had. And so the circumstances of me moving down there was actually because she ended up losing custody of my younger sister. Like she ended up having another daughter. So she ended up losing custody of my younger sister and she was going to be put into foster care. Because my mom had to go into rehab for alcoholism, and then she was also on suicidal watch because she was trying to commit suicide. And so I think also it was just the circumstance, like the stress of the circumstance, because my daughter was 4 months when I moved down there. So I was taking care of my daughter who was 4 months, and then I was taking care of my little sister who was three or four at the time. So it was like really two small babies. And then also pretty much taking care of my mom too, because she was just not in a mental capacity to take care of herself or take care of my sister. So I think also that had a huge play into it. So I was so stressed at that time that like I was trying to I like my breast milk dried up. So I was like breastfeeding my daughter still because again she was only 4 months, but with everything that was going on, like my breast milk dried up. So I had to like then switch to formula. Nothing against formula. I am not that type of mom that shames moms about breastfeed versus formula. Nothing against formula, but it was just the stress of it all. And so yeah, I got to the point where my it didn't seem like my mom really wanted to the help. It just seemed like she was just going through the process because she was forced. So then I told her, like, it got to the point where I was like, I can't do this. Like, I just couldn't. And so that's ultimately what brought me to Central Florida. She ended up finishing her rehab program. She ended up getting sober and ended up getting custody back of my little sister, which was great. However, her and my relationships was always complicated from when I was younger. And so we didn't talk for like so like after I moved we didn't talk, but I was keeping up with her well-being through a family friend. And so I that's how I found out that she did end up finishing the rehab program. She ended up getting custody back of my little sister. And but shortly after she ended up passing away. So because she passed away in March of 2016. So it was really hard on me because again, we weren't in good terms. We weren't really talking. And it seemed like she was like turning her life around. She was trying to get a job. She was sober. She was, taking my little sister to school consistently and things like that. So it seemed like she was like really turned a new leaf, and then she suddenly passed. So all that circumstances is what led me move from South Florida to Central Florida.
That was honestly one of the reasons why I'm from South Carolina, and I moved to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of in a weird way wanted to be away from family so I can
Mm-hmm.
just grow on my own and just
Yeah.
um make decisions without my family's opinion being,
Yes.
in the mix, and kind of having to deal with like so many personalities, and like I just wanted to focus on myself for a bit. So I
Yeah.
get that. I get that. And I noticed too, like with other people whose stories are kind of sort of similar to yours with like relocating for family, you kind of lose yourself a little bit in the process.
Girl, yes. Yeah. I was like, I need to, yeah, it was just a lot. I remember I'm in therapy now, and I remember talking about that situation of being in South Florida. I immediately was like transported back to like the heaviness of it all and just like the stress of it all. And I don't know if you're familiar with brain spotting, which is kind of a branch of EMDR that therapists can do to help with trauma. And so, my therapist did brain spotting for that situation. So, like now, I'm able to talk about it without feeling the heaviness because, like, she helped me like rewire it and process it in my brain. But yeah, I remember like that situation was like I think like the hardest and like heaviest that I have dealt with in my life because it was also just like yeah, just being in the middle of like the situation with my mom and her dealing with her mental health and everything. And yeah, it was a lot. But when you're like you said, like when you're like sometimes in that family dynamic, you do tend to lose yourself and you're just focused on others that I was neglecting myself, and it's like, well, I have a 4 month old to take care of. And it's just like, yeah, I just couldn't do it anymore. But I did want to ask, what part of Texas are you at?
I'm in Austin.
Okay, because I was just in San Antonio. That's why I asked.
My goodness, you're like an hour and some change away.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
let next time you come, let me know. This
I want
that
to go
San
to
Antonio is
Austin
nothing.
and yeah, it's one of my places that I want to visit because I've heard good things about Austin. Like I want to visit the major cities of Texas, but yeah, Austin is definitely on my list.
Sometimes I wonder if Austin is a real place. Like, no, seriously, like I when you think about just Texas, some of the things that come to mind is just like, cowboy, maybe people with a southern drawl, barbecue, which barbecue is here in Austin. Like you
Mm,
can definitely get that. There's a spot called La Barbecue. I think it's La Barbecue. How you pronounce it, but apparently they have some really good barbecue.
mm,
Um, and yeah, things of that nature. But people here are very self aware and in tune with themselves.
mm.
And sometimes that may mean hugging the fruit trees and being in tune with nature and trying certain
Oh my gosh.
substances to get you, to realize like your what's going on in your psyche and in your subconscious. And like people are very politically aware here too. I was kind of surprised about that. Yeah, it's a liberal city, but sometimes like liberal can mean like you feel a certain way about certain topics, but it's not like all encompassing as it relates to all marginalized communities.
Mhm. Mhm.
But from my experience, like I've been learning so much from people from other backgrounds. And I
That's
mean,
good.
yeah, in a way that kind of motivated me to create this podcast because I'm like, man, this place is pretty cool. Like being in like Texas, I feel like maybe Austin belongs in a state like California or something like that. Like it gives me that type of like some other state where you're not being suppressed by Republican laws
Mm,
and views
mhm.
and stuff.
That
Like,
makes sense, yeah.
yeah, Austin is a different place. Like, I'm like, how do we get away with so much stuff that its government doesn't want us
To
to
do.
have and
Yeah.
to do? Like, this is not a real place. But yeah, come here, girl. Come visit.
Yeah.
Got you. Be
Will
your
do.
cultural guide.
Love that.
Yeah. Um. Okay, yeah. So just going back to Florida, I'm so glad. Like therapy is so important, and
Yeah.
I feel like you didn't get a real shot of enjoying South Florida in a
No.
sense too.
Well,
Like
I
you,
spend it well, I would spend the summers, so I would spend summers in South Florida. My mom
yeah,
would
you did
take me
say
to
that.
the yeah, my mom would take me to the beach a lot, so we used to go to Hollywood Beach a lot. South Beach. She actually worked in South Beach, so we would travel to South Beach every day from Hialeah, so that was a hike every morning.
Mm,
So yeah, so I did get to experience. So she would like take me to a like Aventura Mall, Dolphin Mall, which actually is now an outlet. It's not even how it is anymore. The Miami Aquarium she would take me to, and then there was this water park in West Palm Beach called Rapids Water Park that we used to go to a lot. There was also like this mini cruise casino. So it would like leave in the morning and then come back like at 11 and then we'll come back at like 6. And then it had a night time too, but for night, like kids weren't allowed because it was literally like the casino and the nightclub. So we used to do that a couple times. Like I would like to hang out at the pool and then there was like arcades for kids and then she would like to be at the casino. So we would do that. So yeah, she used to love taking me to the movies too. So yeah, so South Florida I got to see when I was younger, like through the summers. Like yeah, live there. And I don't think I would be able to live there anymore just cuz South Florida is just such a different pace than Central Florida. Like such a different pace. I feel like Miami or South Florida is like much more faster than what it is up here in Orlando. And it also feels like Orlando's more family oriented. It's probably because of the parks. You know, we have Disney and Universal and all that. So I just feel like Miami is more of like I feel like a nightlife. Like there's a lot more nightclubs and stuff like that to do versus Orlando. But I mean, we'll go visit Miami, but we were mostly here in Central Florida.
okay. I think he might be my first guest who actually lives in Central Florida. So this is cool. Um, yeah, might be first guest. So
Well, I don't go to Disney a lot. I get that question all the time. No, I don't go to Disney a lot because I'm not a Disney adult. We do get discounts for being Florida residents, but it's really
oh,
not much of a discount, to be completely honest. So like, and if I do go to the parks, I don't go in the summer. I will only go in our winter, which really is just like 70-degree weather here. And yeah, what else do I usually always get asked? You can get People always try to like find somebody who works at the park to like try to get tickets, but the problem with that is that like the employees from the parks, they usually get like friends and family tickets, so they're technically not supposed to sell them, and
Oh,
if they do sell them, they can actually get fired. So what people try to do when they try to do that is just like they have to pretend that they are a family or a friend of the employee, and so yeah, there's a huge risk for that. And I don't want to bother people with that. It's just like if I'm gonna go to the parks, I'll just pay my way. But yeah, those are usually the other questions that I always get about living in Central. It's like, oh, do you go to Disney a lot? No, I don't.
as far as you being in Central Florida, how did that move change how you view what's possible for your future? Because I see you've been doing a lot of like good things, and as far as like your podcast, consulting,
Yeah,
things of that nature, your newsletter,
yeah, that's a
and
really
you're
good
you're very
question.
well connected from what I've seen. But like how has that changed your view on what's possible for your future?
Yeah, I mean, just the diversity here is so much more richer than in Grand Rapids. Like, yeah, I said like there's a huge Dominican community, a Mexican community, but you can find people literally from all over the world here. And so, yeah, so when I talk, and then normally there's it's actually rare to find a native Floridian. So like when you do find a native Floridian, like they're very proud. Like, no, I was born and raised in Florida, because there's just so many people have immigrated from so many other places. And so yeah, the diversity here is just so rich. And again, it's just such a bigger city than what Grand Rapids is. So I just feel like, you make those connections with people and you learn about their background, where they came from, what brought them to Central Florida. And so it just seems like that's usually the topic of conversation, versus like if you're in Grand Rapids, like everybody was born and raised in Grand Rapids, the majority of people that are there. And so yeah, what really made me be more connected to the community and really like put myself out there was my podcast. Again, because I am interviewing immigrants, so it's like I do have to, like, it's very niche, right? And so it's like I do have to put myself out there to like find my guests. But it's like now when I go to like networking events or like conferences, like I'm able to like strike up a conversation with a stranger, especially if they have an accent. Then I'm very curious. It's like, oh, where are you from, and start like that. But yeah, so definitely moving to a bigger city is just, yeah, it has helped me expand more and be able to talk to people more.
Okay. And so you mentioned that there are more opportunities where you live now. Were there opportunities like what kind of opportunities were you missing before when you were, because it seemed like you for the most part enjoyed Grand Rapids, like
Mm-hmm.
being there, and that you found like friends and people that you connected with, and you went to school there.
Mm-hmm.
You enjoyed the Four Seasons. Well, no, that's what your father said.
Well,
He
I
mentioned
enjoyed
the
the
Four
Four
Seasons. Yeah, you
Seasons
Four
too.
Season too.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, and you went to Florida. You moved back to Michigan.
yeah.
And I know you ended up like relocating again for family, but yeah, just curious if there's like any like difference as far as like opportunities in Michigan versus
Well, when I
Central
moved
Florida. Yeah.
back, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And then I quickly got pregnant. And so then I was like, okay, I'm bringing another life into this world. I really need to get my ish together. But when I was like looking for jobs, and I don't know if it was just because of the market at the time, but like I didn't know what career I could actually do in Grand Rapids. But then I don't know if that was just because like I didn't have guidance, or I just didn't know like where to look, cuz again, I was at this period where I was like I just need to get a job. And so I think like I struggled with that, like, okay, what is going to be my career? Like where could I actually work in Grand Rapids. I think that was my biggest thing. But then here in Florida, since my family was here for years before I got here, like my stepmom had connections and was like, "Hey, like you could work here, or I can, I know the office manager for this place, like we can talk to her and things like that." So maybe it was that, because yeah, even when I graduated high school, like I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I really didn't know, like, okay, this is the path that I can take on to do X career. So I think that, but then yeah, once I got to Orlando, I just felt like it was just so much bigger, and then there was just like so much more to do, I guess, than what it is in Grand Rapids.
Okay. And we know a little bit more about you now.
Okay.
Seems like you have a lot on your plate, which is, it can be a healthy thing. You're managing motherhood or balancing. I like that word better. Motherhood, your brand, your family,
Yeah.
and just trying to grow in the Orlando area. And sometimes I'm on social media and I see moms like you just trying to like relocate and trying to balance that schedule and have a social life while settling in a new place. Do
Yes.
you have any words of advice for people like that
To like try to find their community.
to try and find their community and try and find a balance between mom life, working, and
My
the
goodness,
social life
yes.
and trying to settle in a new place? Like it can be overwhelming if
Hmm.
you don't have a support system. But it sounded
Yeah.
like, you moved, it was just like you, your daughter, and your husband.
Hmm.
Yeah, like how were you able to just manage all that and still build a life in a new place?
So it was hard making friends at first. I will be honest, because I was so focused on school and work, and then my daughter. And I got to the point where I was kind of like, I'm in this cycle. This was like after I left my daughter's dad. I was just like in this cycle, and I was like, dealing with all that. I was in a very like negative state of mind and things like that. And so I was like, I need a change. And so I decided to be super involved in church. So I actually got really involved in church. Funny, there at that time there was this group of Dominicans who had lived in Grand Rapids, and then they all moved here. And so my husband was part of that group. And so we knew of each other because we had seen each other in Grand Rapids, or we had each other on social media, but we never hung out in Grand Rapids. So it wasn't until everybody moved to Orlando. So my husband relocated from Grand Rapids here because of his job. And so there was like three other families that happened the same thing. They all worked in the same place in Grand Rapids, and then they relocated here because of their jobs. And so again, we like knew of each other, but we didn't hang out in Grand Rapids until here. And so one of the couples had started going to this church, and they invited me to go. So then me and my daughter went, and I loved the church. I got really involved in the church. I started going every Sunday. I started going to small groups on Monday nights, and then I got to the point where I was one of the leaders in the youth. So I got really involved in the church, and I met a bunch of nice people who were around my age, and and then I became really really good friends with one of them. So she is like still to this day we're very good friends. She actually has helped me a lot with my podcast and the business aspect of things. And so once I got really involved in the church, that's when I started to like meet more people. And then again, I met my now husband, so I was like hanging out with that group of friends for a little bit, because he was like, "Oh yeah, like we're all good friends," and I was like, "Okay," so we started hanging out with them. So it took a little bit, honestly, to find my community, but eventually I did. It was mostly through church, and then once I launched my podcast and started going to networking events for businesses and stuff, then I started being more connected with other like entrepreneurs and things like that. So slowly but surely, that's how I've been able to like find and connect with people. But yeah, it was hard at first because it's like I was just going to school and work and was just and then go home. So like I really wasn't going out or being able to find people, and I didn't realize how hard it was to make friends as an adult. It's like because again, like I grew up with the same people in Grand Rapids, so it's like I knew them my whole life. But then once you move to a new city, it's like you don't know anyone, so it's like you have to be intentional to like go out, put yourself out there to like find friends and things like that. And at the time too, like I was working at a small doctor's office, so like I really like, and the other employees were like so much older than me, so like we really couldn't hang out because we were like in different spaces in our different seasons in our lives. But then once I left that office, I went to another primary care office, and there was more people my age, and I actually became really good friends with two employees, and we're friend like it's about to be like 10 years now that we've been friends. Because for some reason at the time I had like I had this mentality that like people that I work with are just my coworkers. I'm not going to be mix business with, pleasure and stuff.
Yeah.
But so I had that mentality. But then when I met again, when I changed jobs and I met these two girls, like they were cool as hell. And I was like, no, I want to be friends with y'all. Like, and we're still friends. And it's funny because they don't have kids. So I'm the only mom in the group. And so like, but they understand that I'm a mom. And so sometimes it's just like we literally have to schedule out months in advance. Like, hey, when can y'all get together? Are y'all available in August? Are y'all available in stuff? And so like we have to like literally like book it in our calendars and stuff so then we can plan to hang out because life just be lifing.
I just want to commend you. You really are. I'm a fan of your story now. Like the fact that, I mean, I was like before just like learning about your background through your
Yeah.
podcast, but now just like learning about how you've overcame challenges and you um you didn't quite give up on the process of like starting over in a new place,
Yeah.
and you've made like an amazing life for yourself and you're helping other people
Thank you.
and
Now I'm
supporting the
going
family on top of all of that.
I'm gonna tell everyone, like, if y'all really want to know my story, listen to this episode because I think this is like the most open I've been with my story because it's literally about relocating and then like what happened for with each relocation. So no, I appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. No, thank you. I should be thanking you, girl. I wouldn't be here without you. Like, love this. Okay. So I want to talk more about your podcast,
Okay.
The American Dream and the Eyes of Immigrants. And
Yes.
you're shaping the way in which we view immigration, not from a political standpoint,
Yes.
but from holistic, from a human aspect. What would you want people to know about the human side of immigration? People who are like tuning in to
Yeah.
this podcast who may not be super familiar with the
Hmm.
immigration process, how it works in the US.
Yeah.
What would you like people to know about the human side of it that might not
Yes.
make it into the political debates?
So what I would like people to know is like when they do hear anything on the political side of things, I want them to be more curious and question why. Like, what is going on? So, for example, the last few years, we kept hearing that there was an invasion going on, right, in the southern border. Whether it was an influx of Venezuelans, it was an influx of Haitians. But all we kept hearing was like they're invading our country. Well, what I would like for people to do when they hear these type of things is like take a step back, find out what's going on in that country as to why people are leaving because people don't want to leave their country just because they're like, "Oh, let me just go to the United States to see how it is." Cuz one, it's not that easy, and two, people are literally leaving family, their language, their culture, their home behind. So the majority of people don't do that because they want to. A majority of people do that because they have to. And so that's what the human side of things is like asking yourself, why are people leaving? Like, what is actually going on that we're not being told? And that's really why I started the podcast to share stories, because when you what you hear in the media, what you hear in the news is always the politics. It's never a story. So, for example, the influx of Venezuelans coming was because of the political and economic and humanitarian crisis that is still going on in Venezuela. And actually, the majority of Venezuelans actually ended up in Colombia, which is a neighboring company. Oh my gosh, which is a neighboring country. So there are more Venezuelans in Colombia than what they are where they migrated elsewhere. And then the influx of Haitians is like, if you look at what was going on in Haiti, then you will understand why people needed to leave. I mean, it's run by gangs. And then, we can always go into like the deeper history of how the US played, into all these Latin American countries and how it's destabilized its economy and stuff. But that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, so I started the podcast because, again, I grew up with immigrant parents. My husband's an immigrant. I went through the immigration process with my daughter's dad. And so I know the immigration process. Like I know that it takes a lot of money. It's a long process. Finding an attorney, one that is not a scammer, because unfortunately, there is a lot of immigration attorneys that are scammers. Finding an immigration attorney that's honest, has integrity, and then also that you can afford. Like, that is a privilege. Even having an immigration attorney is a privilege because, if you go through like the criminal justice, like you can get it appointed a public defender, right? Not for immigration. You don't get an immigration attorney assigned to you for your immigration case. Like, you have to go and find one and be able to afford it. So there's that. So when it was in 2019 that I wanted to start a podcast, like it was in my heart to start a podcast because I've just always been so intrigued with people's stories. Like, I love listening to people's stories. I read a lot of memoirs. Usually the podcasts that I'm listening to are usually interview based, and it's usually people telling their stories. And so I was like, man, like, I want to do that. I want to like highlight people's stories and see the good things that God is doing in their lives and things like that. So that's what initially my podcast was going to be about. But then fast forward to 2022. So I wanted to start it in 2019. I was actually doing my master's program at the time. So I just didn't have the time to launch the podcast then. So fast forward 2022. I was actually on maternity leave with my son. He was 3 months old. And I was like, okay, I still have this urge in my heart to start this podcast. Let me actually start researching. I was like, oh, I have more time now on my maternity leave, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm researching how to start a podcast, Googling and like writing down the steps and the things that I need. And then it finally came down to like, okay, what is this podcast going to be about? Like, I know I want to share stories, but it's like, what stories do I want to share? And one day I come across an article in Medium, and it was an immigrant from Kenya. And in the article, she was sharing the cultural shocks that she had experienced here in the United States after moving, and just how each cultural shock that she experienced like really diminished her confidence in herself. And I read that and I was like, that is so sad. How she's a smart woman, knows multiple languages, had to come to the United States, but then like didn't feel comfortable within herself because of the cultural shocks that she's experiencing here. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with her. It's just, the whole process and everything. And so that article really, really hit me. And I remember going to my husband after reading it, and I was like, babe, tell me your immigration story. Cause like, I know you came when you were 9, you were the youngest of 3. Like, I know that, but how did you feel? Like, how was your experience? Do you remember like coming to the US? And he was like, yeah, very vividly. So as he's telling me his story about how like, going from a tropical island to like New York City, he was like, where are the trees? Why are the roads so big? And he was just like mesmerized by everything. And so I'm listening to his story and I'm like, that's it. That's what I'm going to talk about. I am going to talk about immigrants sharing their journey coming to the US, If they're comfortable sharing why they had to come, we can talk about that. We'll talk about cultural shocks. We'll talk about how they adapted living here. And then we'll talk about like what are they up to nowadays? Because I was like, all of those details are not shared, not talked about, which is pretty much the immigration experience. And then I wanted to highlight what they were up to today because literally the majority of my guests are business owners. And that goes against that misconception of they're taking our jobs. And it's like, no, like they're in the survival mode and they have to figure out a way to make a living, you know? And so like they end up creating their own businesses and creating jobs and things like that. And so I was like, I don't want to get into the politics of it. That's messy. I just want to share people's stories. And within the stories, if they're comfortable, we can talk about the process, you know, depending on which visa they come with and the circumstances, like we can talk about that. And I've interviewed immigration attorneys, which I absolutely love because the majority of times they are immigrants themselves. And so because of their experience, they want to help people navigate that process. You know, I've interviewed authors, which I find completely amazing that they're publishing a book that is not in their native language. And I've just learned so much history through people's stories, especially like when people come from what used to be the Soviet Union and learning about how like they didn't have any access to like Western media, like no newspapers, no radio stations, no movie, nothing, because it was all blocked. You know, just like learning, just again, just so much history, world history and things like that, just through people's stories. So like for example, I interviewed a lady from Germany who was there when the Berlin Wall fell, and she experienced that, and it was just like so amazing to hear that history through her perspective, right? Because she was there and experienced that. And yeah, so I'm just learning so much, and then also just learning like how more complex the process of immigration is in the United States. So for example, I had a guest who her sister petitioned her and her parents because her sister immigrated first. So she petitioned for her and her parents, so they quote unquote did it legally, did it the right way. And so everybody's process went through, everyone's paperwork except for hers. And they couldn't figure out why. Like what, like they couldn't figure out if the lawyer had like done it incorrectly or what it was. And so they ended up going to another attorney. And when she was like looking through the paperwork and in the system, she was like, there's an order of deportation for you. And mind you, she was like 16 at the time. So she was a child. So she got that like that information, and she was telling me in the episode, she was like, I literally wanted to disappear. Like I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want to like cause any trouble to myself. I didn't want like, she just wanted to like go under the radar, right? Because there was literally an order of deportation, which they still don't know what happened, but they quote unquote did it correctly, which is why also it like infuriates me when I hear ignorant comments about like, oh, do it the right way. And it's just like, y'all don't know. Like you don't know, or else you wouldn't be saying things like that. So that was one story that it was like she did it the right way. There was an order of deportation for her. Like they were able to like fix the issue, and then she was able to get her paperwork done. But it was just like there's so many things that can happen throughout the immigration process that people don't understand. And one of the biggest things that I learned early on when I interviewed the first immigration attorney was he explained that, like, you know, every 4 years, every 4 to 8 years, we get a new administration, right? And so they make changes to the immigration policies, but the immigration, there's such a backlog right now because there's not enough judges to listen to all the cases. And so, because of the backlog, he explained that you can file a case this year with the current policies, but the judge may not see that case for 4 years or 5 years down the line. There may be a new administration, there may be changes to the policy. And even though that case was legit when you filed it, it may not be anymore when you file it 5 years later down the line. So, how is that fair to someone who came, is doing it quote unquote the right way, but then policies change, so when a judge sees it, it's no longer valid? That's not fair. You're like, you see what I'm trying to say? So it's just like There's just so much that people don't know. And I've learned so much with doing this podcast, but I just was sharing people's stories and their process and stuff like that has been really eye opening to me. And my hope with the podcast is like I say, my mission is to change the narrative of immigration to a more compassionate and empathetic approach. And I'm always an advocate for humane policies. Like, we need to be able to treat people with dignity, treat people with respect, and just listen to their stories. Like, you don't know why people come. You don't know what happened to them in their home country. Like, I've had guests who were sexually assaulted back in their home country and they ended up fleeing. And so there's just so many nuances and things that happen within the immigration experience with these people. And I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just so empathetic and so compassionate with people and their stories. And yeah, so I just wanted to highlight that with my podcast. And yeah, that's why I started, going on 3 years now. And so when I started, we weren't in this where we are now, which is crazy to think about with the immigration, what everything is going on right now. But again, I like I said earlier, I'm really, really big on my faith. And I really do believe that God put that podcast in my heart for a reason, and I am just following his guidance and I'm just being obedient to what he has called me to do, to share these stories of people, of image bearers, right? Because immigrants are image bearers, and just sharing stories of his people, and that we should treat everyone with dignity and respect. Sorry, I just went on a rant.
We should treat everyone with dignity and respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really should. Especially if we're gonna call ourselves Christians, we should be treating everyone with dignity and respect.
My God. I don't know if people forget that the Bible, I have to look up how many times the Bible talks about treating the vulnerable. And the vulnerable are the widows, the orphans, the immigrant, and the poor. And it talks a lot about that. And I should look that up and be like, you know, that the Bible says X amount of times how we should treat the vulnerable and how God, his heart is for the vulnerable. But yeah, especially if you call yourself a Christian.
Right. If y'all can find where it says in the Bible that we shouldn't be supporting certain folks because they don't share the same backgrounds as we do, let me know.
Yeah,
I like to read that.
same.
So
Yeah.
all right. One more question and then I'm gonna let you enjoy the rest of your day, your
Yeah.
weekend. Just now, we're reflecting on your life and how you ended up here
Oh my
and
God.
um how relocating impacted your journey. Uh, you know, based on all of that, what words of advice would you provide to the younger version of yourself?
Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry. I would tell her, I know you feel lost right now. I know you don't feel worthy, and I know you don't really like yourself right now, but I promise you it will get better. I promise you that you will figure it out. You will be loved. You are valuable and you are worthy, and you will get to the place where you feel like that, although you don't feel it now.
Girl, you're gonna make me cry too.
Girl, that was such a deep question.
Yeah, I think it's important because there are people who relocate and they don't have like the best experience and they feel stuck and just kind of lost and like even people
Yeah.
who are thinking about relocating because they feel this the same way, like stuck, lost, maybe a little bit depressed, not feeling like there's much hope,
Mm.
and then they may stumble upon this interview and they see you and what you've gone through and like you're like those are the words to your younger version of yourself. They may see themselves in you.
Mm.
Well, um and maybe see themselves in the younger version of yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, especially with where we are now. Like the US is in total chaos and no one seems to be on the same page. We need all the inspiration we can get.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
I
hope that
gotta
they find that through you.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you saw my threads, but he's gonna be a guest later on this month, but he teaches about cryptocurrencies, and
Okay.
he sent me a message and was like, all my meetings today were for with my clients were they needed a safe space to share their grievances. So he was like, we didn't talk about crypto or nothing. They were just like talking about the state of the country, and so they needed that safe space to share it. And then he was like, and I heard the story. Actually, Sumi, the one who moved from Hong Kong to the UK, he was like, I heard that episode. And even though she didn't move to the US, she still shared her immigrant experience and she moved when she was really young. And he was like, that story just really resonated with me because he moved when he was young. And he was like, and it just gave me that motivation to keep going forward and just providing a safe space for his clients. And I'm just like, thank you, God, because it can seem like sometimes it feels like what's the point in sharing all these stories because immigrants are still, they're under attack and stuff. But like that message, I was like, oh my God, okay. So my podcast is providing motivation, it is providing inspiration. And that just like fuels me to keep going because who needs to hear those stories will hear them. And again, even if it's just that one person per episode, I'm okay. Like I don't have a million downloads. I don't have a million followers either. But the community that do follow me is making an impact. And I'm just like, Lord, you take control of this. You bring the people who needs to hear it. You bring the guests that I need to interview, and I'm just like letting him take full control because it just, yeah, we're in this state of chaos, and sometimes I'm just like, what's the point? But then I get messages like that and I'm like, that's what it is. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm just so grateful for immigrants themselves to be seen, to be heard, to be validated through my podcast. Because when I first started, I was like, oh yeah, my podcast is for non-immigrants so they can learn. But then as I got going and people were like thanking me for providing that safe space for them to share, I was like, nope, this podcast is for us. It's for the immigrant communities, for those who care about other people's stories. Yeah, like, yeah. So thank you so much for letting me come on here and ramble about my life and my podcast and providing a safe space for those who are struggling with relocating and provide that encouragement to those who are struggling. So thank you.
And thank you so much for taking the time to be vulnerable, share your background, share your passion for what you're doing. And I wish you absolutely nothing but the best. I can't
Thank
wait to
you.
see you grow even more with your brand. And I hope that if y'all make it to the end, give yourselves a round of applause. And make sure you follow Heidi. Her information is going to be in the description of this episode. Check out her podcast. Check out her brand. She's a very multifaceted person who can add value to your life if you like to start a podcast of your own. Yeah. Um, Thank you, girl. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. All right. Well, I hope that you all have a very lovely day. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Relocate Podcast. Take care.